Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fightful Boxing Podcast. I'm your host, Carlos Toro. It is April 17, 2020, and yes, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, we are going video for the foreseeable future. We're going to try to make every single Fightful Boxing Podcast a video podcast. Not going to be audio only, where when we put it up on the Fightful Boxing and MMA YouTube, it's going to be the audio version as a YouTube video. We're going to try to do this video for the next however long we can make this work. We definitely will do a video next week, but this time around we kind of want to do video interviews, and I've been able to secure a couple of good ones, two of which you will see, I guess, two for the price of one. Andrew Moloney, the WBA Super Flyweight Champion, and Jason Moloney, the top bantamweight contender, arguably the best bantamweight in the world to not hold a belt right now. We will get into that in just a second. But before we do, a couple of notes. One, the new Fightful Boxing newsletter is out. You can check it out on Fightful.com, on FightfulMMA.com. You can go, when you go to Fightful.com, you can go to the MMA section, and there's going to be a little tab where it says Boxing Newsletter. That's where you'll be able to find the newest edition of the Fightful Boxing Newsletter. It's not a terribly long one this time around. It's mainly going to be not necessarily a breaking news one, because it's not, but it will be focusing on what's been going on with boxing, current status on every single major promotion, or most of the major promotions. The World Boxing Super Series just announced that it is indefinitely postponing the finals of the Cruiserweight tournament between Junior Dorticos and Mairis Briedis. So we have no idea when that's going to happen. The tournament organizers have no idea what's going to happen. So you're going to be able to see what's been going on. When is the next boxing show from a major promotion taking place? It's gonna be the current schedule is late June 27 in Newcastle, England. I have no idea if that's gonna stay intact. I'm willing to bet that no, it will not. That I think these shows in the UK that are currently scheduled for June and July, they may be pushed back, maybe even just a month, or 6, 7, 8 weeks at the very least. It doesn't look like things are gonna be completely back to normal by the time we hit June. Hopefully we do, but I don't expect things to happen that quickly. Like I've said, for the last few weeks, it almost seems like I expect this to kind of keep rolling over through the summer. I don't expect any major boxing shows to start, or at least shows from major promotions to start rolling until the absolute end of summer. We're talking like August at the absolute earliest. And speaking of, the state of Florida, a couple of last week actually, state of Florida announced that WWE has been deemed an essential business, and they are allowed to continue to film live episodes of their Raw and SmackDown shows. And the reason I say this, and this is also explained in the newsletter, but just for those of you who haven't been able to read up and just want to know right now, for those of you who don't know why I'm mentioning WWE when it's obviously pro wrestling and not boxing, it's because the way the state of Florida deemed WWE an essential business is that they're essentially an entertainment or a sports product that has a national audience, and those who are the employees and the people who work there are deemed essential. Now, what that means is any sports league, any sports team, any sport in general that has a national audience in the United States could theoretically hold shows in the state of Florida that are closed off to the general public, meaning empty arena shows. For those who have been watching WWE programming for the last month or so, they know what I'm talking about. They just shot these at an empty arena at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando. Nothing, it's certainly surreal, but we have gotten used to watching these kinds of shows for the past month. AEW has also been doing empty arena shows. So the reason why I mentioned this is because this essentially opens up the possibility for a boxing promoter, mainly Top Rank and Bob Arum, to potentially say, hey, maybe in a few months, we could talk to Vince McMahon because we already have a prior relationship with Vince McMahon and the WWE, and see if it's entirely possible if they could, if Top Rank could potentially use the WWE Performance Center to hold empty arena shows to create some new content. Now, this doesn't mean that it is definitely going to happen. It is a possibility. And even if those talks don't end up materializing or don't end up with anything concrete being made, it does kind of give us a bit of a glimpse as to the powers that be or the top people in boxing to sort of give, it gives us an idea that they are now starting to think about how do we get back into doing these new shows. May not necessarily be the shows that we are accustomed to seeing, may not be the shows that we were anticipating for the last couple of months. You know, if these shows end up happening at the Performance Center or wherever WWE does them, or wherever in Florida, don't expect, you know, a Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury type of fight. Don't expect maybe Naoya Inoue versus John Riel Casimero. Don't maybe expect Jose Ramirez versus Victor Postel. It's, you know, they don't want to, obviously they'll be losing a ton of money from not allowing fans to enter the arena. So from the looks of things, it's possible that they may allow those fights to kind of sit in the back burner and maybe wait a few more months before putting those fights out. And again, with the big money that it's involved in a lot of these fights, primarily Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 3, it's going to maybe potentially require another round of negotiations. And Wilder Fury 3 wasn't officially announced. It was pretty much earmarked for the summer, then pushed back to October, but there was no formal announcement. There was no official date given. But the way I see it is Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury 3 or Anthony Joshua versus Kurapula may not be an exciting fight, may not be a big fight, but it is a fight that was planned to take place at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That was going to draw 50,000-60,000 people at least. So that's a type of fight where you don't want to do that in an empty arena. That's something you want to hold off until large gatherings are not only allowed, but the people are more comfortable in doing these live arena and going into these massive events. So it's possible that this piece of news regarding the state of Florida deeming WWE an essential business, it could give us an idea of how boxing promoters might be thinking, okay, we may potentially have an option to do some type of boxing. It may not be extravagant, it may not be big, but it is something. And in just a second, you'll hear my interview with Andrew and Jason Moloney, the two brothers who are also promoted by Top Rank. I asked them about the WWE Florida Bob Arum news and situation that's going on right now. We also explored a ton of different stuff that is, you know, that is pertinent one to their careers, how they've been handled COVID-19. We even had a little bit of fun with this. They're both wrestling fans, and we actually kind of have a fun little story regarding the Maloneys, and they even got have a little message for one Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And obviously, we are kind of trying to do this podcast in video form. Obviously, you kind of see my setup right now. You can see some of the press credentials that I've gotten over the last couple of years. Some of you may know that I'm a bit of a gamer, and obviously, I love Pokemon, so figure might as well have something there. So right now, the plan is, obviously, as you're watching, it is a video podcast. The podcast set for next week, where I am interviewing flyweight rising contender Andres Campos, who is 9-0, 23 years old, very, very bright future, who was, you know, he wasn't on the cusp of fighting for a world title, but he was someone that could potentially have made 2020 his breakout year. He's only 9-0, but he's already fighting in 10 rounders, and he's gotten a couple of regional belts from the WBA and the WBO. He wasn't necessarily ranked in the top 15 in both of those organizations last I checked, but it does kind of give you an idea that this is someone that you can watch out for in that division for the next couple of years. Obviously, it's a division that is right now pretty good at the top with Artem Delakian, Julio Cesar Martinez, Moruti Mtalain as the current title holder. I know Kosei Tanaka just left the division. He wants to try to win the WBO Super Flyweight title, which means a fight against Kazuto Ioka. But I'm not saying that obviously Andres Campos is going to be a world champion right now, but he is someone that you could potentially watch out for down the line. Very good young man. I really enjoyed my interview with him. He even showed off his regional title belts, even his national Chilean boxing title. So we discussed that. We discussed his career, how he also has been handling COVID-19, what his goals were for 2020. But right now we are gonna send it to Jason and Andrew Moloney. It was a really fun interview. I certainly have to admit it was one of my favorite interviews that I've done on this show, and I hope you guys enjoyed it because I enjoyed it. The Maloneys told me off the air that they really enjoyed it. So without further ado, here are Andrew and Jason Moloney. And joining me right now on the Fightful Boxing Podcast, you're not getting one interview, you're getting two for the price of one, and really you can't ask for two better guests here on this call. We're kind of doing something a little bit different. I know fans of the podcast may see this as just an audio-only podcast, but we're doing this video. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do something different, especially during these times. Gonna try to do something a little fun. We have the two great boxers right now. We got the WBA Super Flyweight champion Andrew Moloney and top bantamweight contender Jason Moloney, who, if depending on who you ask, should be the IBF bantamweight champion back in 2018 when he fought Emmanuel Rodriguez. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
We're doing well, mate. Thanks for having us on. Yeah, good to finally meet you, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been wanting to, do a proper interview with you guys. I don't know if you guys remember, but we've done just email kind of back and forth for the last couple of years. So it's actually finally nice to properly and formally introduce myself to you guys.
That's right, mate. It's been good, and yeah, good to finally properly meet you, mate. And hopefully we'll have many years together ahead. You covering our stories as we have our successful careers.
Yeah, I mean, look, and we'll talk plenty about your careers. Obviously, right now we are kind of living in an unprecedented time, not just for the sport, but for the world in general. Obviously, with COVID-19, industries left and right are shutting down, suspending operations. Boxing is no different, and you guys are among those that probably were affected the most because you guys were scheduled to have fights, and not just any regular fights. You guys were going to have marquee fights in the United States in the weeks right after the announcement that Top Rank was going to suspend its shows for the foreseeable future because we just don't know what's going on with just about everything. So obviously the first thing is, how are you guys doing? How are your families doing? How have you guys been handling this situation with COVID-19?
Yeah, we're doing all right. Like you said, it's crazy times at the moment, and everyone's been affected so badly from this crisis. So it's it's something that we've all just got to deal with. Like you said, we were really excited. We had some big fights coming up. Andrew was going to defend his world title this weekend, and I was on in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay the following weekend, fighting Joshua Greer on a massive show there with Inui and Casimiro. And we've been working so hard for 16 years to get to the point where we have these big marquee fights, and really wanted to make a huge impression on the US and make a massive statement with some really impressive performances. We were training really hard right through New Year's, Christmas and all that sort of break, and we were flying in the gym. We felt great. Everything was right on track, and then obviously the coronavirus put a big halt to the boxing, and our fights have been postponed, and we're a bit unsure as to when we'll be fighting again. So it's pretty hard, but we've just got to try and stay positive and get through this. We're still training really hard. We're making the most of this downtime and trying to keep improving, so that once we get the green light, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. That's that obviously it's not that uh, you guys were going to fight, and now you guys don't know when you're gonna fight. There's no indication as to when this is when gonna stop. I mean, the next scheduled fight from like a major boxing entity is all the way in June in England for a matchroom show, and let's be honest, we can't really tell if that show's gonna move forward. We really can't tell when boxing's gonna move forward. So obviously, you guys were fair to assume late into your training camps, your respective training camps for your fights. How did it feel? What were your first reactions upon hearing there was a potential that things may go awry when it comes to making the shows happen? What kind of went through your minds upon hearing that ultimately they were going to postpone the shows?
It was heartbreaking. We'd put in a really solid training camp. I actually still have a Filipino sparring partner over here. He can't get home. He's stuck here because I flew him out to help me prepare for this fight, and we put in a good few weeks with him here of sparring, and I was flying in the gym, and we we're only days away from flying over to America. I think it was 2 days before we were due to fly out, we got the call to say all the fights are cancelled and you're not going to be fighting for who knows how long. So it's devastating.
What about you? Obviously you also were also pretty late into your training camp. Is that you sort of have the same sentiment as your brother in regards to the fight?
Yeah, that's right. As I said, we really worked real hard to that Christmas and New Year period, and we've been working hard, and we knew that these fights were coming up, and that they were big fights, and they were an opportunity for us to really make a statement and make our mark in America, and sort of show what we're capable of. So we were working extremely hard. We'd made huge sacrifices. As Andrew said, he'd flown out a sparring partner, and we'd already organised a lot of good sparring for over in America. We're going to spend a month over there, so we'd hired an Airbnb and we'd a hire car. We had everything right on track and ready to go, and then at the last second, the fight's off. So the hardest part as well is that we don't know when this is going to be over. But like I said, we just got to stay positive, and rather than just sitting back and dwelling on it and blowing out and losing your fitness and just stopping training, we're just taking this as a moment for us to get an edge on the rest of the competition. I know a lot of the boxers worldwide are probably taking this as a bit of a holiday. Well, we're doing the opposite. We're still training really hard, and we want to make sure that after this is all over, as soon as they give the green light, we'll be ready to go, and we'll have a head start on the rest of the competition.
So you mentioned obviously wanting to stay fit, with staying in shape and training as much as you possibly can during these times. What have you guys been doing that's sort of maybe different or a little unorthodox or something that's against the norm of what you guys are normally accustomed to doing in a regular training camp? I know I've seen videos of boxers kind of doing what I like to call a phantom pad work, where you kind of have guys on one side of the ring and they have their trainer 6 feet apart, and they're kind of holding their boxing pads, and they're just kind of doing shadow boxing, mimicking do that. And I thought that was pretty clever. What have you guys sort of been doing to stay in shape?
Well, we're lucky. We've got our own private gym just down the road here, and so there's no one else in the gym. It's just me and Jason training every day, and we're using this time to really improve. When you're training for a fight, I believe that's not where you make your most improvement. That's where you're working on just getting fit for the fight, and you're doing a lot of sparring, and basically just trying to get yourself in the best condition possible. But at the moment, we're trying our best just to improve, and it's not about getting fit. It's about fixing all the little 1%ers and the mistakes you have been doing in the past, and just like we'll spend a full week just working on the one punch and perfecting it until we make a huge improvement on that punch, and then the next week we'll work on something else. So over the last month or so, I feel like we've made a massive improvement, and when these fights get the go ahead, we're going to be ahead of the competition and ready to go and take everyone out.
So, in regards to your next fight, obviously, Andrew, you were going to fight Israel Gonzalez, And Jason, you were going to fight Josh Greer. Both of them, both fights were going to be on ESPN platforms. Marquee fights. Jason, your fight, I believe, was going to be co-main event. Andrew, your fight was going to be the main event. And, obviously, have you heard anything from Bob Arum or anyone from the higher ups, the top rank, in regards to your next fight? Is it going to be, is the plan still going to be the same opponents, or is something? It's a matter of you guys have to start from scratch in terms of getting to the negotiating table and securing an opponent for you guys?
Our manager Tony Tolch has been in contact with Top Rank and just sort of seeing where we're at. But obviously, there's a lot of unanswered questions at the moment because no one really knows what's happening. But as far as I'm aware, yeah, we'll still both have the same opponents and we'll still be fighting on the same shows. The location may change, I'm not too sure, but we've still got our sights set on those same opponents, and we're still acting as if we're going to be fighting them. So until we hear otherwise, the goal still remains the same.
Respectively, first let's start with Andrew. Your fight against Israel Gonzalez. Israel is a guy who's on his solid win streak. He was coming off the win against Sho Ishida in Japan. He was highly ranked. He was someone who's challenged for titles in the past, and obviously was unsuccessful in doing so. What were your thoughts heading into the fight, and your thoughts on Israel Gonzalez in general as sort of your first opponent, your first proper opponent as the WBA world champion?
Yeah, Gonzalez is a good fighter. I actually thought that he won his world title challenge against Kalyafai. So I believe he should have become world champion then. And I think he's a very good fighter. But I'm world champion now, and everyone I face now is going to be a good fighter. So I just got to back myself and believe in my abilities that I can beat guys like him. And these are exciting times. The WBA has said that once I get through this fight, that I will fight Chocolatito Gonzalez next, and that'd be a dream come true. But obviously, the first focus is on beating Israel Gonzalez, and then defending my title for the first time over in America, which would be huge. That alone, something you dream about growing up as a kid, is headlining big cards like that over in America and defending your world title. And we were so close to having that locked in, and I just hope that we can reschedule that fight and get back on track as soon as possible, because this is what we've put all the hard work in over the last 16 years for this moment, and for it to be taken away is pretty heartbreaking. So I hope we can kick off where we stopped before.
I'll get to you, Jason, in just a quick second regarding your fight against Josh Greer. But you mentioned, Andrew, the potential fight against Chocolatito, and that's actually something I also wanted to get into. Obviously, you and I have obviously been exchanging emails, obviously, for your manager, Tony, and for the longest time that we have been in contact, your goal has always been to fight Kalyafai, even before you were the interim champion, even before you were the mandatory challenger, and you were just still a rising, highly ranked guy. Your goal had always been Kalyafai, and obviously now that we saw Kalyafai fight Chocolatito, and Chocolatito just tremendous performance in Kalyafai and beating him. Kind of what's been your thoughts now on Chocolatito as champion? Because I'm sure you paid attention to that fight, and I looked at that fight, I'm thinking, this is a very bizarre performance from Kalyafai. He's not a guy that we're used to seeing kind of be in these fireworks, be providing fireworks in fights, and he was just trading it on the inside with Chocolatito, which really was the perfect fight for Chocolatito. And now that he's the champion, kind of what are your thoughts as Chocolatito as a potential opponent, and your thoughts on this, I guess you want to say, post-30 seconds sort of the side version of Chocolatito Gonzalez?
Yeah, well, firstly, the whole reason I wanted to fight you was just because he had the title,
right? And
I've been working my way up the WBA rankings, and secondly, I was just so confident that I could beat him. And after watching that Chocolatito fight, I'm even more confident that I would have done the same thing. So I'm disappointed that fight never happened, but now I've got the chance to potentially fight Chocolatito, who's a legend in the lighter weight divisions and a legend of the sport. A lot of people opinion that he's the best fighter of the last decade. So that's a dream come true for me to fight him. And to become a legend, you got to be a legend, and that would be an unbelievable opportunity for me to fight him, and that's something that really excites me. So we'll see what happens after this, whether I can go straight into that fight or if I still fight Israel Gonzalez first. Leave that up to my management and Top Rank, but that's definitely a fight that really excites me, and one that I'm confident of winning too. I think everyone agrees that Chocolatito is sort of getting towards the end of his career, and I'm getting better every day, so there's no reason why I can't win that fight.
I agree that, even though Chocolatito is still performing extremely well, he is sort of kind of at the end of his career. So regardless, I think that's to be a very, very good fight between you and Chocolatito if that ever happens. Jason, your fight against Josh Greer, I think it's safe to say that this fight between you two was between arguably two of the best bantamweights right now to not currently have a world title. And obviously there were a lot at stake in your fight. It's not just, staying alive in the title picture, but I don't know if you've heard if you were getting any indication from Bob Arum or anyone at Top Rank, but obviously your fight was going to be co-main event to Naoya Inoue versus Jonathan Casimero. And that was going to be for 3 belts, so it was essentially 3/4 of the undisputed championship puzzle. It, at least to me in my eyes, it almost seemed like your fight against Josh is maybe the perfect indication as to who could potentially fight the winner of Naoya Inoue versus Casimero. Maybe not necessarily next, but down the line. Kind of, is that the impression that you were kind of getting as far as the stakes involved in this fight, that you're not just fighting a very good fighter in Josh Greer, but you're also fighting for a potential at a humongous fight down the line, whether it would be against Naoya Inoue or Casimero?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, my goal this year was to become world champion. So I just want the opportunity to fight for a belt as soon as possible. The situation before all this happened was all the belts are pretty well tied up. We knew Inoue was fighting Casimero, and the WBC title was also tied up because Donaire had just been made the mandatory to fight Ubali. So all the belts were pretty much tied up at that stage. And I keep a close eye on the division at all times, and I know that Josh Greer was in a similar position to me, where we're both highly ranked in all 4 major sanctioning bodies. We're both right on the cusp of getting that world title shot, but we're both fighting for that position to get that opportunity to become world champion. And I want to face the best. I want to, I want to be world champion, but also I want to achieve big things in this sport, and I wanted to fight the best out there. The best available for me, I thought, was Joshua Greer, and he's also with Top Rank, so it was a very easy fight to make. So I was really excited for that. It was a fight that we basically asked for, and a fight that I've had my eyes on for a long time. And I'm very confident that I can beat Josh Greer, and as soon as this is over, I'll plan on proving that. And like you said, I think the winner of me and Greer definitely deserves the shot at the world title, and whether that's Inoue or another title, another champion, I'm not fussed. I just want the opportunity to become world champion, and I'm confident that I can beat anyone that they put in front of me.
I mentioned at the very start of the interview that you were very, very close to beating Emmanuel Rodriguez back in 2018, the World Boxing Super Series. Some people thought that you deserved to have gotten the nod in that, because it was a very close fight, very competitive fight. What have you learned sort of from that fight that made you into a better fighter compared, and what's the difference between this version of Jason Moloney versus the one that faced Rodriguez back in 2018?
I feel like I'm a completely different fighter to the fighter that fought Rodriguez. It was a very close fight. It was obviously a split decision, and 2 judges gave it to him, 115, 113, and then the other judge gave it to me, 115, 113. Watching it back again, I think it's a fight that could have gone either way. At the end of the fight, I did think that I had done enough, but at the end of the day, when you fight a champion basically in his backyard, you got to be pretty convincing. And I respect what the judges called it, and it was just a big lesson for me to learn. It's just made me even hungrier to win that world title when I get that opportunity. But I've improved heaps since that fight. I'd only really probably recently moved to my new coach at that stage. I think we'd been together maybe 8 or 12 months, but we hadn't really had that real time to gel and really make all the improvements that we wanted to make. But obviously, when the opportunity comes up to fight for a world title and be part of the World Boxing Super Series, you jump at it and you grab that with both hands. But looking back, if we had had another 6 months together, me and my coach Angelo Hyder, we would have won that fight convincingly. And since that fight, obviously with that extra time together, plus the added experience which I got from that fight, I'm a whole different fighter. And just also having that experience of fighting on the biggest stage. And now, even though I didn't win the fight, I've got a lot more belief in myself. I know that I belong at the top of the division, and I'm confident that I can beat anyone they put in front of me. Where, going into the fight, of course, I thought that I could win, but until you've really been in a real tough and hard fight like that and gone 12 rounds and, being cut and, started a bit slow and come back and really dug deep, and until you really prove that to yourself and you know what you've got in you, you really don't know. So now just having that experience and knowing that what I'm capable of and knowing that I can beat and match it with the best in the division, it's given me a lot of confidence. And yeah, I just can't wait to get in there and eventually fight for a world title. And this time, I'm sure that defeat will make the win even sweeter.
Andrew, I wanted to, and I don't think we've ever interacted ever since this particular fight, but there was one thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, and that was not your last fight, but the fight before that. It was against Selemani Bengaisa. And I can't remember if I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly, but it was, for those who don't know, so obviously last year, Andrew, you had a fight against Bengaisa, and I believe it was in the middle of the second round. He sort of kind of just, I guess you dropped him with a couple of body punches, and then he went down and he spat out his mouthpiece and just saying, you know what, I'm done for the day. It was, I remember... Yeah, I remember watching that fight very early in the morning, and I'm thinking to myself, wait, am I still sleepy, or did I just see what I just saw? And I remember the look on your face, and you're thinking, what the hell just happened? Kind of, walk me through your thoughts as to that fight, because that was one of the most surreal finishes to a fight I have seen in the last couple of years. And I'm sure this must have been the most surreal ending to a fight in your career.
Yeah, that's fight of the year. I'm sure you've watched that one back a few times. Yeah.
The stuff of legends.
No, that was just a bad situation, really. I mean, that fight was shown live on ESPN Plus over in America, and I was really looking forward to showing the fans in America what I can do, but unfortunately I was due to fight a Mexican opponent, and I think it was only 2 weeks before the fight, we found out that he had a problem with his visa and couldn't get into the country. So the Tanzanian guy I fought was a late replacement, and for the time we had, he was the best opponent we could get on such short notice, and with visa problems getting to Australia. So he was the best we could get, and unfortunately, I hit him with a half-decent body shot in the second round, and he spat his mouth guard out and said, "That's it, I've had enough." So that was really disappointing, because obviously I'd trained hard for months for that fight, and it was being shown on a big platform, and yeah, it was really disappointing. But thankfully, we haven't had too many terrible opponents like that before.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly one very, very bizarre. One thing I wanted to get your guys' take on, obviously you guys are part of the Top Rank roster, and I'm not sure if you guys heard about this news, which came out yesterday, I believe, that Bob Arum was thinking about potentially talking with Vince McMahon of the WWE about maybe potentially using their facilities in Florida, because the state of Florida deemed pretty much any sports league or sports team or any entertainment industry with a national television audience the green light to hold facilities in front of in empty arenas. So that, obviously was not something that's going to happen right away. It's not even going to show like a Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight in front of no fans. It really wouldn't make any business sense. But kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on sort of the idea of potentially having to fight, maybe not necessarily in the U.S. or maybe just potentially your guys' backyard in Australia, having empty arena shows, because there is kind of a pro and con against. Obviously, you guys would finally have the chance to fight, even though it wouldn't be in front of a live audience. But obviously, the fan atmosphere is such a vital part to the sport. And sometimes fighters rally just based on the crowd noise, and sometimes fighters use that as motivation. But obviously, that wouldn't happen in a closed set. So what are your guys' thoughts on that, on potentially getting to fight in empty arenas, even though it may not be the circumstances you guys want, but it is a potential where fights could still happen?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Like, we're fighters and we want to fight, and we're training hard right now, and as soon as we get the green light that we can fight, we're going to jump at it. So, I mean, I'm open to that.
Sign me up.
Yeah, ready. I mean, obviously, I was really looking forward to fighting at the Mandalay Bay. I think it was going to be a sellout crowd, and I had a huge little crew of Australians coming over to watch me fight. And like you said, that atmosphere of the crowd can make you lift to another level, and I love performing in front of big crowds, but at the end of the day, it's just you and your opponent in the ring, and if that's in a small little studio with no crowd, and that's what has to happen, then I'm all for it. I think with these crazy times, you got to think outside the box a little bit, and if that's the only way that sporting events and fights can happen is behind closed doors, then I'm all for it. The health and safety of everyone's obviously very important, and you can't go filling arenas if it's potentially going to cause a massive backlash and really spread the virus. So if the sporting events are allowed to happen behind closed doors, then yeah, I'll fight straight away. That's part of the reason we're fighting, we're training so hard at the moment, is because most fighters that maybe aren't working hard at the moment, once we get the green light that the fights can happen somehow, whether that's, like you said, behind closed doors, or whether fights are allowed back on in arenas, well, most guys are going to want 10 to 12 weeks to get themselves prepared to fight, whereas me and Andrew are ready to jump in there straight away. So as soon as something's allowed to happen, if that's at the WWE venue in Florida, then yeah, fly me over there. I'm ready to go right now.
I'm guessing it kind of saw you nodding, Andrew. I can pretty much assume that your thoughts are sort of similar to Jason's.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm ready to go, and we're at really exciting points in our career, so I just want to keep the ball rolling and get back in there as soon as possible. And like Jason said, we're training hard, and we're ready to go now, and yeah, sign me up.
Tony was kind of telling me that, I don't remember if it was one of you guys or both of you guys are wrestling fans. And I remember I saw a picture, and I cannot remember. I think it was Andrew that was wearing an NWO shirt, that was dressing up like Hollywood Hulk Hogan. If I remember, it was.
Wait, that was Jason.
It was Jason. Jason. Okay. I couldn't remember which one, but I know it was one of you guys. Obviously, do you guys currently watch today's product WWE, or is it you guys are just fans of the product from 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I started laughing when you brought that up, because me and Andrew were huge fans when we were younger, and we had a dress-up party that was a WWE theme. I think it was probably our 10th or 11th birthday, and there's a photo floating around that Tony's got where I'm dressed up as Kevin Nash, and Andrew's dressed up as Lex Luger, I think.
Yeah, Lex Luger. Yeah.
But yeah, we loved the wrestling when we were younger. It's something I still sort of keep a little bit of an eye on. I'm not right into it now like I used to be, but yeah, I mean, when last time we were out in America, we went along with Tony and watched the WWE, and yeah, I love what they do. I mean, they're pure entertainers, and yeah, I don't follow it like I used to, but yeah, I'm a fan.
So if you guys, so if you guys were to have like a pro wrestling match, which one of you guys would you guys be doing it as a tag team, or would you guys really be adamant about one being the heel and the other one just being the good guy?
However they want it. Oh, yeah. I think they get paid pretty good, so yeah, whatever they want us to do.
I mean, listen, Tyson Fury was able to get a pay-per-view match, so I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
I know, yeah. That's right. Vince McMahon, if you're listening, we're ready, mate.
So obviously, there a lot of people have a lot of free time now doing because of COVID-19, whether it be through unfortunate circumstance or just the ability to work at from home and just being able to do some more stuff. What have you guys been able to do, just sort of whether it be a hobby or just streaming or binge watching new shows, or what have you guys that sort of kept you entertained throughout this time?
Well, we've still been training, as I said, so that chews up a good 2 or 3 hours in the morning, but we've also got really young kids. I've got a young girl who's 13 months old, and Andrew's got a young boy as well. Who's 9 months. 9 months old. So we're meant to be in America at the moment. We're going to be away for 5 weeks. So, it's a time where we can try and make the most of spending some time with our family. They're at an age where they're changing every day and they're developing new skills and walking and talking, and they're at a fun age. So it is a pretty precious time that we can spend with them at the moment. Like I said, at the moment, we wouldn't have seen them for 5 weeks. So I guess that's one positive, that we can spend a bit of cherished time and quality time with our families. My little boy, he said his first word, he said, Dad, yesterday. So I would have missed that.
That's congrats.
I would have missed that if I was in America for 5 weeks. So there's little things like that are positives also that you got to look at during times like this. So yeah, as Jason said, they change so much at this age. So I'm thankful that we get to spend this time with them now while we can't box. But I would have loved to have been over in America fighting as well. Yeah. Apart from that, I've just been watching a lot of the older fights. Sometimes you forget how good some of the older fights were. So I've run back a few of the classics, and gone back and revisited some of the fights. And some of them I've watched before, but not for a couple of years. And you forget how good some of them were, and pick up little things off all these other fighters that you can try and add a few tricks to your bag, and try them out in the gym, and hopefully make some improvements out of that as well. Because I think watching boxing is one of the biggest ways that you can improve. You can learn new things off everyone, and whether you can take one good thing from all these fighters and bring them into your own style, I think that definitely helps.
What fights have you guys been watching? As you kind of mentioned that, Jason, I personally was watching earlier today the Hagler-Hearns fight, because today was the 35th anniversary at the time of this recording. And obviously, that's a fight that I don't think anyone can't say that they love watching a million times over. It's like 10 minutes of absolute greatness. What fights have you guys been watching? Just curious.
Oh, I went back and watched the classics like Gaddy Ward and all those
amazing fights.
It's Gaddy. I think it's Gaddy's birthday. Rest in peace. He was great. I loved watching Gaddy. I watch Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns. I've been watching a fair bit of Sugar Ray. I'm a big fan of him. Gone back and watched a bit of Roy Jones. Well, I've gone back and just watched heaps of the classics that you just forget how good they were. And like I said, I've seen them all before, but you just forget. And to go, having this time where you sort of draw back to some of the older fights because there's nothing happening at the moment, it's been pretty cool to revisit some of them.
In addition, do you guys? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you gonna say something, Jason? Andrew?
Or... I was just gonna say I've just been watching the guys around my division.
Okay.
A lot of the guys that potential future opponents, and also obviously Israel Gonzalez, and just studying. I think it's such an underused tool for fighters is you got to study the sport and study your opponents and the guys in your division and guys you might be coming up against, and that's something we both do a lot.
Now, do you guys watch each other's fights going back, and do you kind of just bust each other's balls when it comes to something like listen, I'm sorry, Andrew, I could have done that better, or Andrew, you tell Jason, you know what, I could have beaten this guy a little bit quicker than you have.
Yeah, we are super competitive.
especially when we're younger, but we still are. We used to just, compete against each other so much, but now it's more of that, trying to help each other. We still try and get the edge on each other, but now it's more helping, like, you should try doing this, or maybe you're doing this wrong, or maybe you're doing this and you're giving this away, or trying to help each other more now, whereas in the past it was just about trying to get one over the other. So we've matured a bit there. But yeah, it's not so much me trying to beat Andrew now. It's, I want him to hold on to his belt. I want to get my own, and I want us both to succeed.
Lastly, how can people reach you on social media?
You can follow me at Andrew Moloney, on which Moloney spelled Moloney. And I'm pretty much at Andrew Moloney on Twitter, Instagram, and I've got a fan page on Facebook, Andrew Moloney Boxing. So follow me, guys.
Yeah, and I'm basically the same, Jason Moloney. You'll find me on Twitter. My handle was actually Jason Moloney 1. But yeah, everything else is just Jason Moloney. So yeah, follow along, and hopefully it's not too long before we're back in the ring.
Hopefully sooner rather than later, but also done in a safe environment. Hopefully this entire situation can be resolved quickly, and that things kind of go back to the way it was before COVID-19 really affected the world. Andrew, Jason, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. It's almost 2 o'clock where you guys live. It's almost midnight here, but I thoroughly enjoyed our chat. Wishing nothing but the best for you guys moving forward. Hope you guys can get the big fight that you guys have been wanting for a number of years now. And again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure, mate. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, mate. Thanks for staying up so late.
No problem. I stayed up later, so this is nothing for me. This is absolutely nothing for me.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
All right, and we are back. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Andrew and Jason Moloney. 2 really, really good guys. They were, I really do feel bad for them, because they were so close to not just a big fight that they each had, and Andrew was going to face Israel Gonzalez, my bad, and Gonzalez, and Jason was going to fight Josh Greer. And if both of the brothers won their respective fights, who's to say they were gonna get, they might have gotten Naoya Inoue and Chocolatito next, or maybe somewhere relatively near down the line before this entire madness with COVID-19 happened. So I do really feel bad for them, but I do have to say, I do think it's admirable that they're remaining so positive, that they're really looking on the bright side. Obviously they wish that they were fighting right now. It's not, we don't have no idea when this is going to end. As I mentioned earlier on the show, the next event from a major promotion is Matchroom Boxing in June 27th in Newcastle, England. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's gonna stay like that, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm hoping that we can get some live boxing by June 27th, but as things stand, I can't say definitively whether or not that's gonna happen. And I don't think Matchroom Boxing knows. I think when they announced the postponements, I like to think that those dates were not necessarily preliminary, but I guess the people over there at Matchroom and Eddie Hearn were kind of thinking, we're hoping things calm down to the point we can hold these shows. And it's not just June 27th. They got shows on July 4th. They got July 11th. The July 4th was going to be a major show. Dillian White versus Alexander Povetkin, and Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. And I think Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano, I think that was going to be, big fight. Arguably the biggest fight in women's boxing in the last few years. Now, you can maybe point to a couple of Clarissa Shield fights that were just as big, or maybe just as important. Maybe you can even say the Katie Taylor-Delphine Pursoon fight was going to be, just as big. But Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor has been a fight that's been being built up for the last couple of years. We were finally going to get it, and now we have no idea if and when that's going to happen. Tentative date is July 4th, as far as I can tell, but I have no idea if that's going to happen. And July 11th, that was going to be a big night in British boxing, because not only was Matchroom doing Lee Selby versus George Kambosos Jr., which is scheduled to be an IBF lightweight title eliminator, but you also got on the other side of the pond, on the other side of the British boxing promotional pond, I should say, you had Daniel Dubois versus Joe Joyce for the European heavyweight title. And even though it might not be a fight of a ton of interest to some people here in the United States, that was going to be a huge fight, because we are talking about two of arguably the best rising contenders in the heavyweight division. And I think a lot of people look at this fight and think whoever wins this fight between Dynamite Dubois and Joe Joyce is going to be the next British star that could potentially fight for a world title down the line. Now, a lot of people think Joe Joyce's experience and the fact that he's already physically matured, they kind of look at that in his resume and think he might have the edge. Dubois is just so explosive, so young, so quick, so strong. I really think Daniel Dubois, if you were to ask me today, who would win between Dubois and Joe Joyce, in my humble opinion, take it or leave it, you don't have to agree with it, I think Dubois wins this one. I think it's going to be a really good fight. I think Dubois, he's younger. I think he's a stronger puncher. I think Dubois is faster. Having seen several of each fighter's respective last fights, I think that Dubois is a faster fighter, and I do think that's going to be a key difference in that fight. But I hope it happens. I don't know if it's going to happen. Much like with these Matchroom shows, I have no idea if this Queensberry Promotions shows on July 11th is also going to take place. In the U.S., there is essentially nothing in regards to confirmed dates for boxing shows, for at the very least, again, for major boxing promotion. I do mean the Top Ranks, the PBCs, the Golden Boy Promotions, all of these entities that create some of the best fights in the United States. We have no idea if they're going to be doing shows in the coming months. They've pretty much shut down everything, and in the meantime, all we've been getting are, on TV and on social media, these past fights. I know ESPN has been airing a ton of old Ali and Mike Tyson fights. They're gonna do a massive 11-hour block with some of those fights that I have mentioned. PBC, for the next few weeks, they're going to be putting up some big cards that they've aired in the last couple of years on their YouTube channel. They've already got the Deontay Wilder Bermane Stiverne 2 Showtime card, and I was present. I was there, and I think you can see the press credential right there. Yeah, I was actually ringside for that fight. Deontay Wilder versus Bermane Stiverne 2. My God, that was something. That was one of the most unbelievable first round knockout performances I have seen in a long time, and that was a heck of a show right there. They also even got on the PBC YouTube channel, they put the entire Sean Porter versus Errol Spence Jr. pay-per-view card, the entire show, all 4 fights that were on that card. Now, mind you, the 3 fights that take or leave it, what you came to see for that show was the main event, and the main event was absolutely fantastic. Errol Spence Jr. versus Sean Porter, arguably the best fight of 2019. I mean, if you were to ask me, I'd be hard-pressed to find another fight. There's a couple of fights that were just as good, and I do think that Errol Spence Jr. versus Sean Porter was an excellent fight. I'm trying to think of what other fights were that good. Gennady Golovkin versus Sergey Derevyanchenko. That was also a really good fight, and I didn't expect it to be that good of a fight. I know it was going to be a solid fight. I just didn't expect it to be that good, and I don't know. There's a lot of good fights to kind of look at 2019 and 2018, and really take some time, free time. If you want to watch some good boxing, there's plenty of avenues where you can watch those fights, and hopefully we don't have to spend too much time watching old fights before we get to the newer boxing. I think I speak for a lot of people when they say, once this is over, we are going to be so happy when we get new boxing shows on the airwaves. But that about wraps it up for this edition of the Fightful Boxing Podcast. Hope you guys liked the video version of it. You can find me on Twitter at Carlos Toro 360. That's Carlos Toro 360 on Twitter. As I mentioned earlier in the show, the new newsletter can be found on Fightful.com. Go to the MMA section, click on Boxing Newsletter, and that's where you'll find the newest edition of the Fightful Boxing Newsletter. It's essentially a look at what's been going on with boxing, what's the status for every major promotion, where does WWE fit into all of this, because could potentially find a way to get involved when it comes to the return of U.S. boxing, at least from the top-ranked side. So for Carlos Toro at the Fightful Boxing Newsletter, signing out.